Hi guys, Happy New Year. It's good to be back with our third episode of AI. Right?
New
How was
Year!
how,
Woo!
how was your Christmas and New Year?
2025.
Yeah, I was saying to everyone I didn't take the full break, so I was like doing all the weird in between days, and nothing is better. You fire through your to-do list like nothing on earth when you've got no calls, turns out.
I cannot have
Nice.
this. I need my very long break where I forget the world exists and I do nothing
Yeah.
but eat. It's so good.
All I did was get hugged by little kids and eat and didn't think about work at all or AI or anything. It was
That's
great.
that's
Sounds
a,
excellent.
that's good.
And first Christmas as a mum. Am I right in saying that, Megan? Or
Yeah,
second?
exactly. So I foresee I will not have the same choice in 3-4 years. Definitely be having enforced breaks to come, but for now,
It gets better and better as they get older. It's amazing.
It does.
it was so
It does.
nice. It was so nice. Like the magic factor of Christmas, just like off the charts when
Yes.
you've got a little one
A
in the
baby.
family. Yeah,
I know,
loved it.
definitely.
Big changes. Well, I spent Christmas and New Year in Cancun, hence the tan, just in case
You're doing it
people weren't
right.
sure what I was up to over
Nailed
Christmas.
it.
I was going to say majestic tan.
Yeah,
So,
thank you
there
very
you go.
much. Thank you. Great weather, no, it was really good. It was my wife's dad's 70th, so we had a family holiday, so it was nice.
Lovely.
But anyway, we wanted to kick off the new year to explore what AI is going to look like this year and make some predictions and talk about kind of advancements in AI this year. But before we looked forward, Megan, I think you wanted to look back at maybe some failures that we saw last year.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. Just start the optimistic podcast with a right dose of pessimism. Why not? Yeah, let's have a wee look. What did we have?
Anything, but while she's looking, Andy, anything that maybe springs to mind that you
Was this yeah, so I'd sent this link earlier when AI goes wrong. So if any, we'll maybe send it in the show notes. Biggest AI flops of 2024 from the MIT Technology Review. There's some absolute crackers in here. I think one, I can't remember if it was last year, but this has kind of been a continuing theme. I think the whole problem of like hallucinations has led to some very funny outcomes. So and some very serious ones. So there's on the more serious side, there was the stuff about the medical transcripts being poorly transcribed, which I think we mentioned in the previous episode. That was scary because people were sort of saying, "I never said that to my doctor" in that very serious context, and I definitely don't have that condition. And then the company also, this is a good one for you data governance geeks. They were deleting all their data, so they had no way to provide an audit trail and sort of verify, cross-check if the original transcript and the actual source data was the same, etc. So the bit of problem there. I think as well we saw some more stuff around guardrails being a challenge for different generative applications. So in that link that we'll send out, it's talking about how the Grok models from XAI, you can pretty much generate anything image-wise you want there, even very explicit, very sort of dangerous material. So there's a whole conversation as to be had about guardrailing. I think those are the main flops that I'm still sort of seeing periodically. Is like the danger of hallucinations, not providing good frameworks around that to sort of cross-check and verify, and yeah, just stuff around generally. What are we allowing these models to do? Some of the crackers that I think were maybe not last year, maybe the year before, was obviously the Gemini models that were trying to be so not racist they became racist. That was quite a big one. So stuff like that. So I think those are the recurring themes for me. I'll try and think of some more specific ones in a minute, but
Yeah, I think the examples that jumped out there for me were the ones of big businesses really getting it wrong. Like places where you expect them to have thought stuff through and they've actually thrown out like a chatbot or, something generating FAQ content or something like that. It just has gone so wrong. So there's a brilliant example in there from Air Canada where they've implemented a AI chatbot assistant and it's claimed that there is like a refund policy that just doesn't even exist. And then it kicked off this big legal case about whether or not the agent was responsible or whether Air Canada was responsible. Were they going to have to stand by the words of its agent? And there are loads of other examples. And I feel like it's something I'm finding I interact with personally more than almost any of the other examples. Like you try and solve some kind of like customer service issue, you're getting thrown into a chatbot realm and you're getting an answer where you're like, huh? How is this where we're at?
We literally had this morning. We were trying to sort out our broadband and we were with a company, and it's like, well, they've been notoriously really good for their customer service. And then recently they've maybe changed where like their service provider, whatever, how they're doing things. And it's like you're trying to ask them about their broadband and then all they're doing is talking to you about your mobile account. I'm like, you can't even get it. You've got fundamental broadband and you've got your mobile. They're two different things, but it can't even get that right. It's like, well, we're going backwards.
Yeah.
We
I
are.
thought they were going to get more intuitive and more intelligent. Not maybe they've all been on their holidays. All they've been doing is eating chocolate. They've dumbed down a little bit, like we all have, and now they need to improve.
Yeah.
Spot on then. So looking forward to this year, obviously there's a few articles talking about what's potentially in the pipeline or how there's going to be advancements, probably on things that we've typically already saw across AI at the moment. What are you guys most looking forward to seeing, and what are you thinking might change significantly, maybe in your day-to-day working lives?
So I want to pitch a new concept for 2025. I'm optimistic, but in a very pragmatic way. So I think 2024 was the hype cycle. Everyone was getting overexcited. Everyone at all levels of company were trying to throw AI at every problem. They were making up problems that didn't exist so they could use their new favourite product launch. I think 2025 is where we start to rationalise it all. People have now spent all of last year learning what this stuff is and means and where it can be targeted. And I think we're going to start to lose quite a lot of the nonsense that came with the hype of last year. Like just as ChatGPT got released, it started to really go off. I think this year we're going in a contracted way, but in a good way. We're going to start to see some real project delivery and some real focus on value again. So I'm quite excited about 2025 starting with slightly more rational basis.
More less nonsense.
Yeah.
I like it. Less nonsense.
So
I really hope you're right. The hype cycle has destroyed my soul. It's been just this horrible hamster wheel of just gibberish at times. And to be fair, there's a lot to be excited about. There's a lot of cool stuff. And I do think we are kind of living in we've spoken about this before, right? Things are moving quickly. It is an age of kind of really fast-paced innovation, but to your point, Megan, it outstrips what really happens on the ground. And I hope it does marry up. I'm actually worried things will bifurcate even more. I think you're right. There'll be more use cases that are genuinely impactful.
Oh.
I think the hype will kind of keep going in some sort of exponential curve because you've got.
I can definitely see some new sparks of hype. I think agent-based AI seems to be the new December 2024. This is now the time to talk about that as if it's novel and going to really change things for 2025. One thing I would say is what motivates me to be more optimistic is I think regulation and the governance side is starting to catch up a wee bit. So I think 2024 we saw the technical experts really throw a lot out there into the world. People didn't really know how to take it. They didn't know how to govern it for sure. They really didn't know how lawmakers and governments were going to deal with this stuff. They've had a whole year to think about it more deeply, and I think stuff like the EU's AI Act that comes into force mid 2026, everyone's gonna have to get smart through 2025. California's just passed a whole load of new legislation about how to control it, and obviously that's going to impact big players like Apple. So they're almost being forced to be more reined in, get the guardrails right, make it in a way that it's safer. And I think because you force change through legislation, you're going to start to get people unable to just let the hype take away the reality and the pragmatism.
Yeah. But then you've got stuff like the ON models, we'll call them, because where we're on now, O3, and it's sort of with that ARC AGI benchmark and everyone going crazy and saying, this is it, we've now got AGI. When you actually look at the problems, it's sort of, it's weird block problems. And it's, not to dismiss it, the guy Francois Cholet who came up with it and all that, super, one of the smartest people out, right, knows what he's talking about. But it's just, it's interesting how people just let that absolutely run away in their imaginations And then when you look at the
Yeah.
detail of things like, the model was fine tuned on the open training set for the task, which is allowed to be within the parameters of the competition, but people don't understand that, and they sort of go, "My God, out the box, it's doing all these incredible things." You just,
See,
it's
with
to your
stuff
point about the
like that,
rationale.
with stuff like that though, I'm now in like the boy who cried wolf territory. There's so many
Mm,
times people who have claimed like, oh, now we're here, we're AGI, it's happened, and I've heard
yeah,
that too many times. So I've tuned that out now. I'm coming into
oh, that's
2025
good.
not even like capable of hearing that. And it allows
I
me to
like
be
it.
nice and
When it's
calm.
done, you'll be really shocked.
Yeah,
You'll be
I'm gonna
really
be
shocked as well.
absolutely like knocked off my perch.
You come into work one day and everyone's a robot, and you're like, "Oh, I missed
Oh, I
this."
didn't see
Yeah,
this coming. This has really come out of the
I know.
blue.
I know. I wish I'd not tuned out.
Yeah,
Ishbel, what's going to happen in 2025? Are you an optimist, a pessimist, or something in
No,
between?
I'm an optimist. Like, and I do think, like you're saying, I'm hopeful that the hype of people just saying, I want this and I want that, and not really understanding the scale of things or the implication of things or how achievable things are kind of dies down a bit as people become
Mm,
more knowledgeable about what's possible and what's not.
mm,
I'm hoping that some things become a little bit easier, like more intuitive to use. Like some of these things, like, I don't know, Copilot and Power BI, for example, I want it to be able to, like, build me something I can't build with some good prompting. I don't know.
mm,
I think like some things that are make it a little bit more easy to use that, but I don't know how long that's going to take, if that'll be within this year.
mm.
And
Yeah,
then I think, there's been a huge amount of advancement last year in like, the code, like auto completing your code and things like that. So I think that'll be continue to be adopted and be a lot more accurate. I
mm,
find it like, hugely useful just now, not a lot of rubbish coming out anymore. So
yep.
I don't know if that's how I ask questions, if that's me. So I think that people are going to understand, but that is like it's how you prompt the question as well. Like that's
Mm,
obviously people are starting to learn how to get valuable
yep.
information responses back. So I think like that'll continue, and then people become better, and then it's a circle, isn't it? So
Yeah.
yeah, in
Well,
terms of the wider things, obviously who knows what's going to happen
who knows
really.
what's going to happen? We may be on Mars by the end of 2025. No, we won't.
Yeah, the robots.
I'd be really excited if there was. I don't know how optimistic I am this will happen, but I'd be really excited if more use cases came along where I thought, oh, that's actually a really good example of AI augmenting human capabilities. So if it helped in science or something, and I know there's already been some talk about that, and last year there was obviously the Nobel Prizes just all going to AI, or 2 out of 3 of the main ones. But I know that it would just be really exciting if there was sort of, oh, we made this advance in some particular area, and one that was sort of doesn't need to be substantial and big, but one I thought, oh, that's quite a nice set of examples. I'd be really keen to see that, and I'd also be keen the narrative to change a bit. I'm seeing a lot of kind of the narrative around this stuff about, oh, Klarna, for example, saying they don't need to hire people anymore because AI can do all their tasks. They've said they've not hired anyone in a year because they've got AI now. And that to me is a bit negative.
Yeah.
I want to see a lot of, here's examples where we made humans be 50% more effective at blah, blah, blah. There are
Now
some.
we can do all these other things that they couldn't do
Yeah,
before.
exactly.
Just a few
I know.
jobs in
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, and the coding stuff's kind of had that narrative for a while, but it'd be good to see some other examples of that where like actually productivity jumped by quite a bit, or humans were able to do stuff that leveraged what they were good at and made them even better. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I agree with you, Megan, on the agentic one as well. Agents is definitely an overused term now.
oh, it's a
Yes.
killer.
Yep.
I was quite keen to ask you a bit more about that then, in terms of how they're being used at the moment, how companies are adopting them.
Mm.
Obviously, we've heard about how they might replace traditional SaaS products as well, or SaaS companies. So
Yeah.
yeah, good to get
Should we start
explore that
by
a bit.
breaking down what people tend to mean by agentic AI or agent-based AI?
Let's give it a go,
So
and I look
Like
forward
that.
to angry letters we get
yeah,
in,
exactly.
and we did it wrong.
Come
Yes.
at us because we'll definitely
Come at-
misrepresent this. So my interpretation of what people are meaning by this is that it's an AI tool service assistant essentially that can like chain together a number of different tasks. So it might be able to, if we focus on software engineering, write codes put that together in a file structure, and then push that back to GitHub or whatever kind of code kind of tooling that you're using. It's, for me, a term that just talks about an increased level of automation of existing AI tools and services. So where you're like daisy chaining a couple of things, you're pulling in like a large language model to produce code, you're getting it to like pull together a number of different like code management prompts with file management prompts and do like a whole set of tasks without as much like human in the loop intervention. Like you're not including like a human to drag and drop code in different places. You're not having a human do like the code commits directly, like the file management and stuff like that can be organized. And if you kind of scale that out to other use cases, I think it just means the same. An agent is something that can sort of daisy chain a number of different tasks that work in different kind of formats or contexts to complete like an overall larger problem. What I find really frustrating about the introduction of this as terminology, it doesn't really represent anything new in terms of AI core functionality. Like it's not, for me, really representing like a foundational shift in what AI models are available. So it's a marketing term to me. And
shots fired.
Yeah,
shots
got
fired.
it.
Angry letters, not me. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, Megan. One thing I would say is, for me, important is it's potentially easy to conflate going down that sort of definition that you've made, which I do generally agree with. You already have the concept of workflows and pipelines in software, so you can already orchestrate and define steps of things that happen in, to your terminology, daisy chain different pieces of sort of technology together into a solution. I think the key thing that makes it agentic, or in this agent kind of world for me, is that that orchestration is dynamic and extremely flexible.
Yeah.
And is dictated by an LLM at some point. So it's rather than, you can use tools like Apache Airflow or variants of that, for example, in the data engineering and ML world, to say, here's a pipeline, do task X, Y, Z, alpha, beta, gamma. And then in each case, if it fails, do this. And you can build these sort of these workflows that can be quite complex, but it's not agentic because it's how those steps
built it.
is relatively static. Yeah. So I think that's a big one for me. But yeah, I think you're right, Megan. It's just taking LLMs and sort of doing that orchestration layer, and then having tools that it can call, or other LLMs, etc., that it interacts with, and then that is exactly it. So it does the dynamic orchestration, but then it does just go through a series of steps to get to the answer. The hype is massive around it. It's ginormous because people think that if you crack that, you're going to open up a lot of automation that was previously maybe outside of the scope of things like RPA, robotic process.
Yeah, which, to be clear, you will. If you create an AI agent that's capable of doing an entire like task suite, you will do a lot more. But the problem with it is that you're embedding so much risk in that. So you talk about an AI agent as if it's able to do a task, do it well enough, and do it to the equivalent like standard as a human. The guardrails that you need to put in place for a system that is that complex are so much more rigorous and difficult to define than they were with just a single prompt output, human on either side of the process. So I think like you can scale up your impact substantially if you create an agent-based system that's kind of a wrapper around multiple different models. But your risk is going to also just be like off the charts compared to where it was beforehand.
How are they being created? So, for instance, are you building them yourself based on your own data, or are third parties coming in and doing that for you, or is it a product or service that's built and then it's sort of wrapped around your own?
So fundamentally, it's a way of building your application to solve a given set of tasks. So there's open source frameworks like Crew AI, for example. So just the equivalent, and LangChain, etc. as well, have agentic pieces in them. But just like LangChain does sort of simple workflows for LLMs, something like Crew AI does the same, but sort of starts defining agents. And it's just basically a little wrapper code that says, interact with your LLM in this way. And your LLMs, like we've discussed before, are usually hosted by a third party. You're not really running them yourself. You can be, but they're usually somewhere else. But yeah, you're just sort of saying, you're just building this sort of code that says, when given an instruction, first there's a call with a first LLM that sort of says, given that instruction, break it down into separate subtasks, and then make a decision as to those subtasks, what tools or other sort of services you need to generate a response or solve the task. And it's just that really, you're combining lots of things there, chain of thought, style, prompting, and all of these other sort of different elements. But fundamentally, all you're doing, it's just a way of organizing your application. And the point earlier I sort of made was that the sequencing of the steps and the definition of the steps is now quite dynamic. Before in an application, in a web app or something, that would be very statically and concretely defined. And to Megan's point, that de-risks it a lot because there's only so many ways you can go through a certain web app that I build. That makes it easier to test, etc. With an agent, you're sort of dynamically changing that each time. But it fundamentally is, there's open source ways of doing it. You could code it from the ground up yourself, sort of build it all out in Python or something. There are now SaaS providers coming online saying, we'll do all that for you. Just provide some basic prompts or some basic sort of descriptions of what you want.
That's what I was going to jump in and say, which feels different in 2025, is the number of companies that are claiming that they can give you agents as a service out the box. So I think most of the different cloud providers are coming up with some product that looks like that. I think most of the different customer service management tools are going to come up with something that looks like an agent-based model, and so it should be the case that most companies can give it a try just by pulling something off the shelf. So it's going to be a marketing term that has great accessibility to people the whole way through this year, and we'll see by the end of the year how many people have successfully and valuably adopted that.
I agree. And the low-hanging fruit will be very simple agents, so very simple agentic workflows, and then people claim that as a massive win. It was just like when ML came out and people doing linear regression stuff, they were always doing in Excel. They translated it to Python and says we've deployed an AI model or an ML model. It'll be the same sort of branding exercise, but fundamentally, like you said earlier, nothing too foundationally different. And if you try and do a very complex task, like you said, there's just error propagation on all of those steps. So you have to think very carefully about what you're applying it to, how you're going to monitor and maintain it and debug it, etc.
So if we went back to my favourite fails of 2024, which are quite refined in scope on a chatbot, in a customer service agent, you scale that through 2025 and that agent can now go and change things about your account or make a couple of purchases. Let's see how that goes. What failures we've seen across the market.
Perfect then. So to finalise, is there any other observations about the year ahead that we're excited about or potentially nervous about, or any final observations before we bring this to a close?
I guess that would be a key one. This year's probably going to see potentially more fails if companies that are maybe don't have a huge data science team have now the power to implement things that are, agent-based maybe. So then they're building things that they're trusting on really, really new kind of technologies, I suppose, and then deploying them without as many stringent checks as a human might have thought of. So I guess that would be, hopefully doesn't happen, but could be something that we would see more of in 2025 as things become more readily available to people.
Yep. I want to try and end on a high, but another negative I'm worried about. Megan, you bring it back first.
I'll
try and think of a positive.
I'm scrolling.
But one thing that potentially worries me is I don't think we've started to see the sort of the negative aspects of this technology through deep fakes and through kind of AI generated slop populating the internet and stuff. I'm really worried about very coordinated mass sort of disinformation attacks and things like that. I think that's going to come. There's going to be sort of really big. The information space it potentially could become quite polluted by certain actors with certain ends in mind. It's going to be interesting to see how that happens. There was already that example again. I think I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but I mention it all the time, where basically the Russians did a fake video of Zelensky capitulating. I think this was 2 years ago, not last year. And for a while it caused a lot of confusion on the battlefield in Ukraine. There's going to be examples like that just in lots of different scenarios. There doesn't have to be big political things. And what's going to happen when you sort of, this might not be this year, might be in the next few years, but like if you're going to a court case or something, is video evidence going to be admissible anymore? Because it's all so easy to generate. So I don't know. There's things like that that sort of worry me. Is like what's going to happen to the veracity of information that's out there and where it's coming from. It's going to be hard to disentang. But anyway, that's a bit of a negative one. Somebody cheer us up. Come on.
Trying
come on.
to turn that into a positive. Yeah, I have only one way to try and turn that into a positive, which is that I think that we're seeing the impact of that be felt more and more, so that the big actor is going to have to start changing some stuff. So simple examples of that, when you're using Google search for images, for example, like the volume of AI generated images that are now cropping up is becomes so like dominant that it makes you not want to use that tool or service anymore. And I think they're going to have to start sorting that out. Like they're going to have to start thinking ways.
Are they labelled as being AI generated? Would the user know that? Or is that just
like we said before? It's too hard to distinguish sometimes, and it's maybe with visual stuff it's maybe easier. I don't know. Definitely with text it's super hard in the research.
Yeah, I find it really difficult. Like I think using again Google image search as an example, like I find it really difficult to find images that are of as high quality as you used to be able to find through an image search.
Yeah. Perfect example. My baby son, my 1.5-year-old, is obsessed with the moon and stars right now, right? Star, moon, star, everything star, moon. And there was obviously the great kind of confluence the other night of the moon and Venus.
Yeah.
And I wanted a picture of that or a picture of the moon or moon and stars. I could not find a real picture for ages. Because to your point, Megan, it was all this AI generated, like really baroque, ornate stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was like you can just tell
like
the sort
Dali,
of over
Midjourney, really high contrast.
Like,
so I feel like that sounds like a negative, but it's now so obvious, and I think in everyone's like consciousness that they're going to have to sort it out in 2025. So I hope that December 2025 we will have a recovered image search. There we go. That's my prediction.
Good save.
Perfect. Well, great to chat to you. We look forward to seeing what prevails over the coming months. And thanks for having you on, and we'll catch up soon.
Cheers, guys. See ya.
Yeah.